First of all, Beth, can you talk a little bit about the origins of this project? How did you get involved with the story? When? How long of a period of time were you filming for?
Do you really need that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I started in 2012. I went to visit my daughter who was actually in the film. She was working at the health clinic as a social worker. And she introduced me to a lot of the refugees, and so that gave me immediate access to that world. And started filming then, and went back every year thereafter till 2016 when I completed the film. And I basically was there for like 10 days to 2 weeks each time.
Excellent. Let's switch places here. Is that better for you? Okay. So, you know, I'm curious to ask you, what were the biggest surprises in terms of what you learned? You had witnessed what's happening in this country, what's happening in Europe, and now, you know, you're filming this story in Israel. What did you expect going in, and what were the biggest surprises of what you learned during the process?
Well, first of all, it was very complicated and I didn't understand the things. So at the beginning, I was really trying to learn what was going on, who was there, what was happening, and it may have been something that the Israelis knew all about, but as an American Jew who is pretty, I think, I was at least in 2012, up on what was going on. It was all new to me, so it was a matter of uncovering a very complicated situation in a very complicated. That was really that was one of the reasons why I was so drawn to the film, because of the challenge to understand it and to create a story out of it that was that explained the situation in a way that was through story and behavior and just, you know, the history through the years of what was happening. You know, there were many surprises to me. I think the biggest surprise was more on understanding through the eyes of many different people how they experienced the refugee situation in Israel, and then bringing it up to today with the new administration on how so much has paralleled the refugee situation here globally, and trying to understand it through all the different points of view to see that it's a very complicated situation, and every place is really determined, you know, on a case-by-case basis. You would say it's not black and white. It's pretty. It's a complicated situation. Yet, you know, everybody day to day, we just live our lives.
I think it was interesting in the film that you seem to really be able to strike a balance between representing citizens that were in the South Tel Aviv neighborhood that were very welcoming and wonderful. You know, the Seder comes to mind as one of those times, and just all of the help that individual citizens were giving to the people who were living in Levinski Park. And then giving voice as well to the people in the neighborhood who are more economically disadvantaged than in other areas of Israel, and their challenges that sort of echo the racist voices, you know, that we hear here in certain communities.
Document what I saw and heard. So although you can't help but put your point of view across, I still tried, and I hope it did come across, that there's a valid truth to almost, you know, everyone's situation.
Okay, I want to bring you, Oscar, into the dialogue. We see you in the latter part of the film really working as a community organizer. At least that's how I would see your role in this community that's very polarized. And I'm wondering first if you could share a little bit of your own story, since we don't see that in the film, and then talk about how you came to take this leadership role in the community, having these really challenging conversations with people.
Thank you very much for the question. I do know that I do have an accent, and in case my accent will come to prevent you from getting me properly, please let me know so that I can find a way of making myself understood. Am I okay so far?
Yeah, really great.
Okay. The most important thing that I have to tell you this evening is that I am a father. I've got a 14-year-old daughter, Estelle. I'm going everywhere with my daughter.
She's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. To introduce myself, I'll say that I am originally from the Belgian Congo. There are two Congos. One is French Congo, another one is Belgian Congo. Therefore, my first language is French. But I lived in Israel for 22 years, and then I'm kind of fluent in Hebrew. Of course, I know some people here will say, oh, this guy is from Israel. They will say one say in English, but they say exactly the opposite in Hebrew. No, what I'm saying in English is what I'm going to say in Hebrew. Well, I was raised by my grandmother. My mother is my mother was born in Angola, which is Portuguese colony. The father of my mother is from Portugal, and the mother of my grandmother is from Ghana. My mother went through a tough experience. The time when she was born, the father loved her very much. He wanted to take her to live with her. Many parents told their children that this child is not white enough to be with us. She must go back. The mother said, fine, I'm taking my child. The mother of my mother, my grandmother, took my grandmother back to Congo, to her country. The parents told their children, this child is not black enough. She cannot be.
Interesting.
Yeah. Therefore, I was raised by my grandmother. Since when I was born, my mother was very young. She couldn't properly take off me. I was raised by my grandmother, who knew the rejection, and then she raised me with those values of standing up and being the voice of those rejected. To make it short, when I got to Israel, my journey is the same and different. It's the same because I got also to Egypt to Israel through Egypt, but I got into Israel illegally with visa and passport. Since the relationship between Israel and Congo, they were very good. I don't know why. There are millions of reasons why they were very good, but one of them is that between my country, Congo, and Israel, one of these two countries were selling weapons to the other. I can't tell you which one. I was not in the Maybe somebody he knows who's selling weapons to who, but I don't know. Okay. Then when I got to Israel, one thing was clear. I came in Israel speaking French, which is my first language, and kind of a fluency in English. But it was clear that I was not in France and I was not in England. I was in Israel, and the language was Hebrew. If you are in Israel, you will get this message one way or another, whoever you are. The language in Israel is Hebrew. Then I turned to the place where I could learn Hebrew, Ulpan. They said, no, you don't have the Israeli ID. You cannot learn Hebrew. It's forbidden. It's like, okay, good. I told the guy who was working with me that I went to learn Hebrew in order to communicate with you guys. But they said, no, I can't learn Hebrew. I said, don't worry. He went to buy a book for first grade, and he brought me. He said, this is Aleph, Aleph like A. This is Aleph, this is B. And then he gave me the book. Then I went on my own to start learning Hebrew. I ended up, of course, studying Hebrew in the Ulpan, but these were the first steps. But when I come to have certain fluency in Hebrew, I quickly realized that some of the problems I went through in the Congo, they were also here in Israel. Therefore, if I would try to stand up and be the voice for the community, it will be important. Since I grew up with Israel, it wasn't very surprising to me, but I just couldn't pass the message. Now, that was due to the barrier of the language. Now that I had the key of the language, then started advocating for it started with the foreign workers in Israel. One thing is important, the neighborhood we saw in the movie, Hatikva, the movie is in 2012. In 2003, I was living in that neighborhood. When the Israeli police started to deport foreign workers, mainly from Ghana and Nigeria, the very people you saw saying deport Sudanese back to Sudan, those are very true. They used to hide Ghanaian and Nigerians into their houses and telling them, the police, Israeli, a true police will come looking for them, they'll say, we don't know what you're talking about. The incitement, the allergy that we have noticed toward Africans is actually from Israeli politicians. This is the difference between Israel and Europe. You talked about the situation, the way it is in Israel and then where it is in Europe. In Europe, you have the population turning against the foreigners and the leaders telling them, guys, we are in the rule of law, you should abide by the law. In Israel, it's the opposite. You have leaders inciting to hate and xenophobia, and you have the population turning to people saying, we are sure, we've been persecuted for years. We should be as true as it is mentioned, that we are all going light to the Gentiles. We should show light and not hate. This is the difference. The problem is the same, but the approach between Europe and Israel is different. In Israel, the xenophobia and hate comes from leaders. Thanks to heaven. The guy you saw, Eli Ishai, Haredi guy, today, if he comes 500 meters close to the office of Shas, the one who put him as an interior minister, he will go to jail. He has been chased away from Shas.
I see. Okay, this really sheds a lot of light, I think, on what we're seeing. I want to open it up to the audience because I know people are going to have a lot of questions. So I think we have a mic over here. So just raise your hand and we'll find you.
Okay, we have a question here from Hale. And he was wondering, what was the target audience for this film that you made? Who was the target audience?
Diaspora Jewish community.
Yes.
I think that's really, that's where the film has landed and made the most impact.
I have two questions. One is there any relationship between the Ethiopian Jews and the Eritrean and Ethiopians who are non-Jews? And secondly, what's the status of the attempt to improve the laws about refugees?
Okay. I let Oscar answer the first one. Do you know that?
Well, Ethiopians are true and are citizens of Israel. Therefore, there is in some way no connection between Ethiopians and Eritreans. This is one side. But on the other side, Ethiopia and Eritrea have been for a very long time, almost all the history, one and the same country. Just 20, 25 years ago, they went to war and they split up. Now we have Eritrea and then you have Ethiopia. So it's like Koreans or Germans, East and West or North and South. So in that way, there is a connection. But in terms of identity in Israel, Ethiopians are citizens of Israel, they are Jew. I'm not telling you that a life of Ethiopian is perfect, no. But I'm telling that they don't have the same life, they're not sitting on the same level, no.
And I think she was asking too, are there good community connections between the Ethiopian Jews and the Eritrean refugees?
Yeah, I would say yes, because Eritrea, Africa, is divided globally roughly into two parts, French Africa and English Africa. Eritrea, Ethiopia Ethiopia is neither French colony nor English colony. Therefore, they don't have English, they don't have French. They cannot communicate easily. The way us as human rights organizations to communicate with Ethiopia, with Eritreans, when they came into Israel, was through Ethiopians, since they speak almost the same language, some roughly the same language. So translators used to be the Ethiopian Jew used to translate messages from the Eritreans to the NGOs. Of course, Israeli politicians approached Ethiopians telling them, if you keep on helping them, your money will go to them, you won't have anything. They turned a part of Ethiopian Jew against the Eritreans, saying, oh, the money they should give us now is going to these people. Some turned lightly allergic to Eritreans, but some way, yes, helping, yes.
I can give you a very, shallow answer to where the situation is today, because it's so fluid, and last I read was that, it gets worse because of the government, was that they were taking money from the refugees, their paychecks, and holding it back, and that they were trying to impose sanctions on the employers. But the one thing that I've learned is that every time there's a repressive law that's imposed by the government, the lawyers gang up and they sue and they come to the courts and they overturn it. So it's really a testament to the democracy that holds fast in Israel.
And I guess I have a follow-up just briefly to that. Do you feel like your training as a lawyer helped in figuring out, what the different strands of, legal thinking are around these issues?
Well, yeah, I think that, I wasn't trained as an immigration lawyer, but henceforth I have been, at least taken a lot of immigration courses, and but I do think as an attorney I was always asking, the legal angle to what was happening so that I could understand legally where each and every one, I interviewed was at, as far as their legal status or, what stage they were in the immigration process.
Good evening. I wanted to know if refugees are still living in Levinski Park, number one. And secondly, have attitudes changed among the residents in South Tel Aviv as opposed to looking upon the refugees as infiltrators and complaining about the children and so forth? Have attitudes changed at all? And then Oscar, I wanted to know if your program of creating dialogue among people, if that has had what kind of outcome, has that had?
Well, my understanding is, and Oscar, you can correct me, that refugees are not living in Levinski Park any longer, that they found shelter, and that there's a lot of different community centers and NGOs that have popped up, since the influx of refugees that do show them where to go and help them out. I think that's the case now. So, let me see, what was it? The attitudes. The attitudes changed. As far as I know, no, but you.
Well,
I'll just say one thing before I forget. I think that because I think Israelis on the whole have come to the feeling that, since there's not a lot of refugees coming in any longer, that they might as well just accept, or at least process, put some sort of policy in place and accept the fact that they're there, so that it can be handled in a proper manner. But that's on a whole. I don't know of what the story is in the South Tel Aviv as of a year later from when I was there.
Well, I would add that the official incitement toward asylum seekers has gone down. Why? Because all of them that you have noticed in the film inciting against asylum seekers, all of them, all, they were members of the parliament, therefore protected by immunity, right? By immunity. Therefore, they have that freedom of speaking, bringing the hate speech easily. But since they have all of them, they have lost the mandate in the Knesset, in the Parliament of Israel, they are scared now because they are no longer using that protection. So the incitement, the official incitement, has gone down since Israel remains a rule of law. Israel is a democracy. Of course, some people use the Israeli democracy like you use a train to get to work. You jump into the train, once you get to work, you drop from the train, you don't care anymore. People use democracy to get into office. Once he's in office, the democracy becomes an enemy and he kicks it off. What I would say concerning the activities of dialogue between the Israelis and asylum seekers, yeah, it was important because, as I said, political leaders used to come to the neighborhoods telling people that, listen, you are suffering because of refugees. The money that we should be giving to you is now going to the refugees, while no refugee receives one single shekel. Shekel is local money from the government. But this is a message which is easy to sell. There is a problem which started long before the refugees come to this neighborhood. Refugees came to find this problem not at all addressed by all the different governments. And to make it worse, the current government is from the right to the extreme right. So it's just making it worse. But the refugees didn't solve the problem of the neighborhood, but the refugees did not create it. The problem was there. They might have made it worse one way or another, but they did not bring problems to the neighborhood. Problems were there.
And I think the last part of her question was in your work, Oscar, like how has the dialogue, made a difference? Can you talk more about the how you measure the impact of the work of your organization?
The dialogue was very, very, very important. When we started working together, the Israelis used to refer to asylum seekers as infiltrators, calling them infiltrators. In the middle of our work, Israelis and the asylum seekers used to call Israelis those people. In the middle of our work, Israelis used to call asylum seekers Muhammad, or Haile, Michael, Peter. Israelis started calling, asylum seekers started calling Israelis Moshe, Shula, Limor, David. We started using names of people and we forgot those stereotypes. So the dialogue was something fundamental. We managed to make it clear to people that, listen guys, we are both victims of the system. We better join hands and fight together rather than fight one against another. We won't make it perfect. There's no perfect place on earth. The only place where human being, there is no only place where it's quiet, maybe, I don't know, on the moon or whatever, but there'll always be problems. But we are human beings, we should face these problems together. We should try to identify what do we have in common. The only difference we might have in common might be the color of our skins, but we're facing the very, very same problems. We are ignored, both of us, communities. I give an instance. The Israeli government will put asylum seekers into the bus, tell the Israeli bus driver, drive straight to South Tel Aviv. Why not to North? Why not to West? Why not to East? Only to South Tel Aviv. Why? Because it's a place where poor Israeli people are living. So they don't have voice. Then they have to carry this burden of the asylum seekers. So one of the messages to the leaders, we did not only come with criticism to the government. We actually came up with some way out to get out of the problem. We said, listen, give temporary work permits to the asylum seekers and let them pay taxes. It's a win-win situation. the government will collect money from taxes, and asylum seekers will work with dignity and security. And since they will be properly registered, if something happened, you will know where it happened and who did it. Today, we are in a situation where somebody can get drunk and do something and say, it's all of them. It's not all of them, it's one or two. Because they are not identified, so there's no way to know who did what. But if they are clearly and properly identified, by letting them work and pay taxes, it's a win-win situation. And meanwhile, you can then put in place the RSD, which means refugee status determination, a proper one, to see who is in line with the refugee convention in order to be recognized as a refugee and who is not. Today, I can't tell you how many refugees and how many are not. Since the RSD process is not put in place, it's there, it exists, the knowledge is there. The main problem today is the will to implement the process. I'm not saying that the problem is a small problem, but what is missing the most is the will, not the heaviness of the problem.
Well, maybe when you solve it, we'll model after you. We have time for one more question.
Okay. Hi. Did they close down Cholot? Because I had heard that the Supreme Court said it was illegal to hold the refugees without trials and that they have to be let go. I don't know what year that happened. I also wanted to know, are most of the refugees Christian or are they Muslim or both?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, in Israel, to say, people would say, somebody who with the black skin such as me is referred to as a Sudanese. So people will tell you, Sudanese from Nigeria, Sudanese from South Africa, Sudanese from Zambia. So, but the truth is that out of 40,000 asylum seekers today in Israel, the huge majority is not from Sudan, actually from Eritrea, and they are Christian. But since Sudan is a Muslim country, for politicians, it's easy to sell allergy toward a Muslim than to sell allergy toward Christians. Therefore, they refer to all of them as Muslim to sell this allergy easily. Though, while Israel was attacked like in 1973 by six or seven Muslim countries, Sudan contributed. Sudan was one of the players in that war against Israel. And most Israelis still have it in mind. So when you tell Israelis that this guy is from Sudan, it's already a problem. And to make it worse, asylum seekers are not referred to as asylum seekers, they are referred to as infiltrators. Let me tell you a little bit of what is it. People do infiltrate the state of Israel, yes. Why and who are they? They come from neighboring countries. They infiltrate the state of Israel, carrying a kind of whatever in the t-shirt or in the bag, go into a bus or train or supermarket or whatever, and blow up and kill people. So when the Israeli population is told that these asylum seekers are infiltrators, the message is clear, they don't need any translation. So the expression of infiltrators in Israeli society is extremely, extremely dangerous. For somebody who lived in Israel for 22 years, I can tell you that when the late Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was killed, this is exactly the copy-paste process. Incitement to violence, incitement to hate, incitement to violence, incitement to hate. I personally saw some Israeli leaders putting Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister, in the uniform of Nazi soldiers, standing in the square. 3-4 months after Rabin was killed. The incitement to violence made it that 2-3 years ago, a bomb went off in Beersheba, and an asylum seeker was running also from the bomb, and was taken as an infiltrator. And then was shot on, he fell down, he didn't die, but the guy died because people came with chairs and woods and people came up.
We actually showed the film that was made here, so some of the people may have seen that.
The guy wasn't killed by those people. The guy was killed by incitement to xenophobia toward asylum seekers a month before.
And the second part of that last question was about Cholot? If it was closed?
Cholot is still open. People are still in Cholot. You have to keep one thing in mind, that Israeli leaders today, again, they use the law when the law fits their fits and moods, then the law will be implemented. If the judges decide against the mood and feelings of politicians, the law will not be implemented. The High Court of Justice in the state of Israel is made of 9 judges. All of them, 9 out of 9, said with one single voice that the way the government is dealing with the asylum seekers is against the Torah and against the law of the state of Israel. That was even before the Cholot is opened. They opened the Cholot, they put asylum seekers in Cholot. They listen to the judges if the judges go into their feelings. If the judges oppose their feelings, then the judges are ignored at the best. At worst, it's just kind of, I don't know, we say lynch in Hebrew. It's immediately a lynch of judges by the politicians. They will come portraying judges as enemies of the state of Israel. If they don't follow the moods and feelings of politicians, they turn into enemies of the state of Israel.
Okay, very enlightening discussion. Thank you all so much for coming. We'll be out front if you want to continue the conversation outside. Thank you.